Coming to you live from the shadow of the big house, it's IT4U. Tips and tricks on ITS tools, products, services, and more with your host, Jean Mackey. To IT4U, I'm your host, Jean Mackey. So these are interactive webinars brought to you by ITS. If you're having any audio or video problems during the live webinar, let us know in the chat pod. And if it's not on our end, we can offer some troubleshooting tips. If you're watching the captioned recording of this, just look in the description and there'll be a link to the resources document. For those of you who are here live, we put that link in the chat pod if you want to follow along with the slides that the presenter will be offering. If you need an accommodation to participate, just give us a little bit of a heads up. Okay. What's coming up? We're taking a break in August, but we've got James Langerich from ITS who's going to give us an intro to digital signage. And today, we've been asking the registrar's office for a while to take the time to talk to us about student data and business objects. And Mandy Barnes from the Office of the Registrar is kind enough to join us today. So, turn it over to Mandy.
Hi there, good morning. Thank you for joining me to talk about student data here at the university. We're going to go through a bit of a presentation, and partway through that presentation, we're going to start to look at building a business objects query. But the first part of the presentation is to lay some groundwork as to, what the data universes are and the different fields that are important to know within them. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm from the Registrar's Office, as Jean said, and the Registrar's Office falls under the umbrella of the Office of Enrollment Management, OEM. There are a few other offices that are under that umbrella that have ownership of student data. So in this slide, we're taking a look to see that the Registrar's Office really has interest and oversight over student records, or SA03. We also are key players as far as third week count, SA05, and then we also maintain looking at SA07, or student retention and completion. If you have questions related to other student universes, we won't be covering them. This presentation mostly covers SA03, and then we're going to be talking about some differences between SA03 and SA05, or student records and third week count. This is a great slide to look at if you have questions to think, okay, I have admissions data questions. I'm going to want to work with the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. Or, I really need to look at some financial aid information, so I'm going to want to reach out to the Office of Financial Aid. Okay, so diving into the student records. Student records really is the live data that's coming from production, so it's updated every day, every night. And it includes information about a student sort of demographically speaking, their gender, their birthdays in there, criteria that defines them as an individual, but also contains information relating to what their relationship is with us and seeking their degree. So, what types of degrees they're pursuing, the programs that are associated to complete those degrees, and then their progress thus far in those, as well as what they've enrolled for and registered for. So taking a look at the academic records folders, we want to highlight a few fields that are really important in each of the different folders within the SA03 universe. If you're looking to try and research the student's program outside of what maybe they have enrolled in for the term, you're going to want to access ACAD-Prog, which stands for Academic Program. And in that folder, there's a few fields I wanted to highlight, which will be the backbone of your queries when you're researching students with a particular program. And the first one being the program action effective date. That is the last day in the system in which a change became effective. It may not be when the change was put in, but it was when the change was made effective. Then you have the program status, which is a big indicator. Most of the time, you're going to want to look for active students. But you may be interested in students that have been discontinued or have a different status altogether because you're trying to research what happened to them. The admit term to a program is also important because you're trying to track within the program how long they were there and maybe how long it took them to get that program done. And then degree checkout status will let you know if a student is, in the process of applying for graduation and how successful they are, whether their application is pending, gives you an idea of those students that are exiting, how that process is going for them. So then the enrollment folder within SA03. This is really the backbone of a lot of the reporting we do, especially the reports that are public on our website, which I will cover later. This folder has a lot of information. The best subfolder within it that you want to work with, which we will be working with later, is the student car term folder. This folder contains some key fields. These ones are the ones that I've highlighted, and again, they will be the backbone of any sort of reporting you do if it has to do with looking at what students are enrolled for a term. So then obviously the first field being term. Term is organized in a sequential code system, so you would need to pull in the desker description in order to know what term you're dealing with, unless you deal with term codes often. The term is generally, it's 4 digits. So an example here on our slide is that, 2210 ends up being fall of 2018. So moving forward, once you've selected a term, you're really going to want to know what kind of students you're dealing with.
Car means career.
Car means career. Yep. Well, I mean, in this, generally, yes. Yep, in this case. So when you're looking to research students for a term, you want to generally look for registered students, and to specify that to the database when you're querying it, you'll need to use the reg status or registered status field. And we will be covering how to use these and what they look like in more detail when we do our example query. So I need to kind of power through just overviewing these fields. And I don't want to get lost too much in these details because it'll make more sense when we get further down the road.
And Mandy, just let me throw out that there's a link in the resources to the data dictionaries, and they give more information about these fields and folders.
Yes, they absolutely do. And then these are the ones that we feel from our office, or we wanted to cherry pick from those because they can, be a little overwhelming for people. So
yes.
Entry type ends up being where the student is as far as when they begin their relationship with the university. Are they a transfer student? Are they a first-time freshman? Or are they a student that's been with us for a while and they're continuing? This is the status that will let you know and understand what point in time they began being a part of our campus. The ACAD level BOT stands for Academic Level Beginning of Term. And this represents their status within their program, and it's based on the number of credit hours that they've completed towards a program. So someone could be a transfer freshman, or they could be a first-time freshman that comes in at a sophomore level, depending on the number of credit hours they're bringing in. So understanding the difference between entry level and ACAD level is a very important thing for building out your queries. And then the last one being ACAD Prog Primary. Students within their career will have multiple programs, and this is just the primary one that's assigned for the enrollment table. More about that later. And then we have our degree folder. So, once a student has completed their program and they've been awarded their degree, how wonderful, that's really good. Then their data is moved to the ACAD degree folder. Key fields from this is the term in which they completed their degree, the status, most of the time it'll be awarded, very few people are revoked, and then it's going to be the level of completion, so bachelor's, master's, doctoral, so on and so forth. So sometimes you may want to research when a student completed their degree, how did they get there, maybe what semester they came in as a freshman, and then what term they completed their degree, how long did it take for them to complete their education with us, would be of interest. Okay, so we're going to talk through a query example. I will go through it in the slide. Yep.
Question, I usually access student info through Web Focus. Can you show where we access the SOA folders?
Okay, I'm not familiar with what web focus is, as I'm familiar with business objects and then PS query in production.
Yeah, we're just working with the data warehouse, and I don't know.
Web focus may be a third-party software for reporting that has been tapped into the data warehouse. There are some people across campus that use, third-party reporting software that, works with the Oracle client to connect to the warehouses. We might have to kind of shelve that for now, because this is more related to how you do things in business objects. It's oriented in that fashion using that interface. So
it's a Flint thing. Okay.
Oh, okay. Then I'm sorry, I don't quite know that for right now. So we'll go through what we're going to do here, and then we'll go out to business objects and we'll build this ourselves. So we're going to be looking for certain students that meet the below list criteria. We want to see for the coming fall term, those that are registered in what would be undergrad LSA, language, kind of our biggest pool of people. And then we're going to be looking for people who are either a junior or senior within their program. We want to make sure that they're continuing students, that they didn't transfer in at that level. We want them to have been with us for a while. We're looking for female students. We're looking for the ethnic group Asian. And then we're looking for people who have a citizenship of non-resident. And so this is a screenshot looking at how you build this out in business objects. I'm going to go out there now and we will build this, but I just wanted you guys to be aware of what it would look like if you try and build this yourself after the presentation is done.
Mandy, is Flint data in the SA03? Do you know?
We're
campus.
As far as I understand, SA03 is just Ann Arbor campus
That's
data.
What I was pretty sure is the case.
Yeah, so
we'll double check that and get back to you.
Right. The different registers offices sort of maintain their own sort of data in a sense. Yeah. So I've never dealt with Flint data before. Oops. How do I?
Tab.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So I already have it built here, but we'll go through how to grab all these items. I'm just going to have this one as for reference. So in other presentations, you would learn how to navigate to business objects, how to begin a report, how to get to where we're at currently. So I'm not going to focus on that. I'm assuming that you know how to get to the report building area. And since we're going to make a new one, but we're making a new reporting tab in the same report. So I'm going to leave the one that's built and I'm going to make a new one selecting the student records data universe. Okay, so now we have our blank slate here, and we're going to want to go into person data to begin with because we want to get some fields going here. So normally you would pull in the person's name and their emplid. Because we might run this and I don't want that information displayed for this recording, I'm going to avoid doing that. So we're just going to grab the desker for their sex because I had discussed we were looking for female students, and then we're going to grab the desker for the ethnic group because I described that we were going to select ethnic group Asian. And then we're going to move on. So that's the demographic information we're going to grab, but obviously feel free to add more when you build out your report based on the interest of who you're looking for. So any sort of demographic information can come from the person data folder. Now, if you're looking to communicate with students, like you want to send them an email, you need to grab their campus ID. And campus ID is going to be located in personal phone. It's a little hard to find. Campus ID is the first part of the UMich email. So then you take that campus ID and you connect it to @umich.edu. Again, this is sort of, identifiable, so we're not going to bring that in, but I wanted to mention that as we're moving through the folders. So we're done working with the person data folder. We are not researching anything related to their degree because they're still with us pursuing their degree. We are not going to be researching their program. We're going to be researching what's going on with their enrollment. So we want to look for the fall 2018 term. The desker will help us find that. You can use the term field in general, but if you're new to BusinessObjects or new to running these types of reports, it's completely acceptable to build your report in a way that's easiest for you. So this is going to give you descriptions that will allow you to more easily select what you're working with. And it works the same way as if you were to just select term. It's just a different thing that lets it be a little more clear. So again, then we're going to see we want registered people, and we want to make this equal to or in list. Either way, it's going to result the same, but we'll clean it up to say equal to. So we have registered people. We're doing great. I'm going to go back here for reference real quick. We wanted an ACAD career of ULSA. Most of the fields we're going to be grabbing for a query are going to be in the enrollment student card term folder. So ACAD career equal to. You can again search from the values list, or if you know, feel free to just, type it in. It goes faster. So we're going to grab our ACAD level BOT desker. It's towards the bottom of this folder. This folder is a wealth of knowledge. So if you see EOT, that stands for end of term. But generally, people want to know someone's level entering into a term because that's sort of, you're looking predictively at a future term. And the end of term ends up becoming the next BOT. So, end of term may be helpful in some cases, but 90% of the time you're going to want to use the beginning of term. Oh, so we have two things that we're looking for. So I have to leave that as in list because we want to look for both juniors and seniors. So there's our juniors and here's our seniors.
And if you use equal to, you can only do one value, or unless you can do multiple.
Correct. Yep, exactly. So I wanted to make sure to change that. And it will prevent you from even being able to select more than one because it's a smart interface for you there. So then we wanted an entry type desker of continuing.
Question about who has access to the personal phone table. I didn't think it was broadly available.
So I think that might be, it depends on OR's role access.
Yeah, and you need to know to do your job, basically.
Right. If you need it and you don't have access, our area is a part of approving access requests, but we're not intimate in knowing how to best request that through ORs. So
yeah, so you would create a ticket through the ITS Service Center. And you would give it to our access and accounts lead.
Right, exactly. And then part of that workflow is our area to then approve it if we feel like your business need is appropriate, which most of the time it is because we're all working at a university. So we need to see what's going on with the people who we're here to help, and that's our students. So yes, I would put in a ticket and then it will workflow to our area and we'll communicate with you if there's an issue with providing that. Generally not. Okay, so then what I could have done when I was in the person data folder is grab the gender desker or sex desker and the ethnic group desker and the citizenship desker, but I'm going to have to go back and grab those. I didn't think to grab them when we were up there. So we're going to close out of that, go back to the person data. Let's get rid of that. There we go. We got some more room to work with. Grab that. And citizenship status. So equal to, and I'm just doing this so I don't have to type out the long words. If we were using the non-desker fields to build our query, it would be easier to type, F for female instead of write out female, so on and so forth. And we'll grab our ethnic group we're interested in. And then we'll grab our citizenship status we're looking at. Okay, so I'm going to run this as it stands. I think that's all of the first part of it. We're going to build a second part to our query, but that's in step 2. And step 2 has to do with the subquery we're going to perform, but this is our basic query that we're going to start out with, does anyone have any questions at this point of the demo related to how to get these fields, what they mean, and where they come from? Okay.
Guess not.
All right, we're moving forward.
Gonna do a subquery, huh? We're getting fancy.
I know, I know. Okay, the first one I had built, the one that was already ready to go, I was using as a reference point. I had grabbed more fields. Obviously, I didn't bring in any identifier information. We just got a result of, the person we were looking for, a female, ethnic group Asian, who's a non-resident, and this individual is enrolled with us for the fall because we see the registered status. They are a continuing student, and then they had to have a junior level completion within their program, and then their program is within the career of ULSA. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation so we can talk about the next step. But when I ran this before, there was a few more people who came up, so this would be an example of the results you would get when you go to build this on your own. And this is a typical kind of query we see people running because they're trying to research within the program that they may administer for their department, what kind of people they have and whether those people are being successful in enrolling and what they're kind of enrolling in at times. So then the second part of our query example is we want to let's narrow our student search to only those students from step 1 who were first-time freshmen in either winter of 2018 or fall of 2017. And this is going to be helpful because we can take a look at the progress of students when they're coming in, how quickly they're completing their program. And the reason why we need a subquery is because we're asking two questions that are aimed at the same field. The first question is, are they enrolled for the fall? The second question was, for a different term, what was their relationship with us? When did they come to us as a student? And so, when you're looking to pull table data, you can't necessarily say, I want data from the fall term, but then I also want data with a different question from another term. You have to ask that in a second question, which is a second query. Yes.
Jackie says, why is the term filter on the slide matches pattern 22.1%, but it's FA 2018 in your live demo?
That is a really good question. We can talk about that. We will also cover that on another slide in the PowerPoint later on, but going to our example here, let's grab up that field real quick and we'll swap it out for the Desker. So I'm going to leave in list here and I'll show you what we get as a result. We have med terms, and so most of the time, majority of students, in this case ULSA, they're going to be registered in a standard term, but med terms M1 through 4, they end up having their own codes.
That's a medical school?
Medical school, yep. And so depending on the reporting you do, it's a good habit to get into. If you're looking for everyone who's enrolled for certain criteria, you want to say matches pattern and you want to use a wildcard for the term you're looking at. So what this tells BusinessObjects is that I want any sort of term that begins with 221 and then the wildcard being the percentage symbol. So it's going to bring in 0 through 4, which ends up being the standard term ending a digit through the last med term for that semester. And I have another slide about that if it continues to be confusing, but I'm going to kind of keep going with building the rest of the query. And then we can circle back if it continues to be kind of confusing. So now we can leave this how it is because it's not going to harm anything for us to bring in the med terms for this particular query that we're building. And then what we're going to want to do is, so this is the first question we asked. We asked for people of all of these sorts of parameters if they were registered for the fall. Now we want to say, of those people, we want to remove anyone who was not a first-time freshman in either the winter of 18 or fall of 17. And since we're adding that extra layer of criteria and we're aiming again at looking at terms, we're going to create a subquery to do that. So to create a subquery, you're going to want to go to the table in which you're asking your question, Currently, we're working with enrollment information, so we're going to stay in the student card term table. We're going to click on the template field because that is the field that would be used to filter out anybody moving forward. And then there's a little button here to create subquery. This is more for intermediate users. The registrar's office wanted to try and create like a level 1 exercise, and then step 2 is a level 2 exercise. So if this is too much for you, don't feel bad. 90% of probably what you need to do you can accomplish with the first query we made. This is just a refining kind of thing altogether. So we want to say to ourselves, looking at our example one, we want to keep people in list. We want to, of our results from the first query, we want to retain people who are first-time freshmen for those following terms. Going back, we want to go here and say, okay, oh, maybe I'm going too far. For the fall, we'll grab up all the med terms and the fall standard. Then we're also going to grab up the winter. These are all the semesters we were okay with them being a first-time freshman. And as we remembered talking about earlier, we want to look at the entry type. The entry type is what are they coming to us as, right? How are they entering into our doors? Are they entering in as a freshman or are they entering in as a transfer? And so we want to leave that equal to. And normally I would have grabbed the desker. It's force of habit that I'm just grabbing the entry type. But even if you just grab a field that isn't a desker, if you do the lookup values, it will give you a desker to choose from. So then we're going to grab first-time freshman, which is freshman 1, and then we're going to run this. Now the results here may not be what I kind of had organized before. So let's take a look. Our junior we had here before was retain. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. When I ran this a few weeks ago, the difference being between just the standard query and then applying the subquery was that if you'll notice in these results, we had both juniors and seniors. And then if we move forward to applying the subquery, the seniors removed. And the reason why the seniors removed is because they probably weren't a first-time freshman in winter of 18 or fall of 17 because they're too far along in their program. We do have people come in with a lot of credits, but that would be pretty impressive. So by applying this subquery, we filtered out the senior student and we just retained our juniors. And then that lets us know that these junior students are still within their first year on our campus, not necessarily that they aren't very far along in their program. I mean, they're clearly juniors, but if you're looking to try and within your program reach out to students who may still be new within their first year here at the U of M at a certain level, you may want to apply this type of subquery. So those are some examples. Feel free to practice them on your own. I'm going to kind of keep us moving forward because I want to also talk about SA05 third week count. The third week count data set is a snapshot that occurs on the 21st day of each term, and we use it for our federal and state reporting requirements. And this data set is also the backbone of our standard reports we have available on our website. So it ends up being sort of this really great, more trimmed down environment to work in. A lot of the fields are simplified and you should be able to make your own reports that are based on snapshot in time, but it's a little bit easier to do because there's less live data that you're dealing with and less detail per se. So third week count has a few derived fields that are different than the student records. These derived fields, again, help with federal and state reporting. They are listed here on the side, important derived fields. Here are the reasons why we created the derived fields. But I think ultimately, you know, there's a few that I'll go into that are really more important. So of our derived fields for third week, we got kind of some top runners, and that's the reporting term. The reporting term basically takes all those terms that someone had asked about before and compresses them into just a standard term. So when you see, you know, a med term, that med term becomes just a standard term. So if it was 2174 in student records data set SA03, it becomes 2170 in the third week SA05 data set. And this is for ease of reporting again, because we have these reports where people select terms and we really want to give them full enrollment counts. So we compress those terms into one reporting term. There is an academic program priority code, which we will cover in more detail in another slide, but its definition is here. And then we have reporting entry type. This really represents an adjustment that is made where if you have someone coming in as a first-time freshman in the summer semester, we really want to count them as a first-time freshman even in the fall, besides the fact that they took classes early. So anybody who's a first-time freshman over the summer, we reclassify as a first-time freshman for the fall, just again to make that more accurate for the true picture of them coming to our campus, and then also for ease of reporting. And if you're unfamiliar with what a derived field is, it takes an algorithm and it takes a few different fields, maybe one field, and it applies a logic, and it then results with a new field that provides another layer of information. So there's a big primary difference between when you're looking at SA03, which is student records, and SA05, which is third week, and that is ACAD program primary versus ACAD program priority. It kind of is a tongue twister because there's only a one-word difference, but they both start with P's. But we're gonna do our best here to highlight these differences. So in the student records data set, you end up having the program under a student's career selected by the lowest sequence number. The lowest sequence number has to do with the timeline in which the programs were entered. So the first one is 0, the second one is 1, third one is 2. They sequentially start at 0. So the program in which is assigned primary for their enrollment is not necessarily the one that is most relevant. It is the one that is most sequentially. It's the lowest sequential one in the series. It's not necessarily the most helpful.
So it's where they started.
It's just kind of where they started. So when moving to third week, we want to make sure for reporting that we have the most relevant program, because we're often given counts to say, we have X number of people who are pursuing these fields of interest. And so a derived field was generated, which is our ACAD Prog priority. And that derived field has a particular logic of how it looks at all the programs that a student has in a career and then assigns them, a priority based on that. The logic is listed here. It's kind of wordy, but I will read it because it's kind of important. So I try not to read the slides. I know you guys are reading along, but the ACAD Prog priority determination logic is as follows. If the student is enrolled in only one program, that program is their priority. Kind of makes sense. If they are enrolled in multiple programs, the priority program is assigned based on the academic level. So if you have someone who might be getting a dual degree of some sort at a different level, then we're going to take that highest level. Ties are resolved by selecting the program with the most units taken progress for the term. Units taken progress is enrolled hours. So if a class is 3 and another class is 4, if the total between all of that ends up being more than another program, we're going to go with the one that they enrolled in the most hours. Again, that kind of makes sense. It has the greatest weight. If there is a tie still, the program with the highest total cumulative hours completed is considered the priority program. And if there still is a tie, then one is randomly selected, which normally never happens because you got to go pretty far in to have that happen. So what this does is this new derived field, if we look down here at the bottom, it gets a 1 value. And then this is what would be the sequential value associated with their program. So, you could have someone having the lowest value of any number of things. But at the end of the day, we're assigning a 1 to whatever program ends up being the most appropriate based on a determination logic. So this is one of the most important things to think about and understand the differences between SA03 and SA05. So this is relating to data security, and we wanted to talk about the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA. FERPA is what our office primarily is, it's our largest compliance that we need to meet. We have some other things we need to meet as far as compliance goes, but this is the biggest one. So there is both directory and non-directory information under FERPA. Directory information are things that are more appropriate to be released at times, though discretion should be used. Non-directory information are things that we need a written release from written permission from the student or their parent if the student is a minor under the age of 18. We have on our website a bunch of detailed information about the appropriateness of how to handle this type of information, what fields or what types of information are directory versus non-directory. This slide just summarizes what's going on, but it's always very important to emphasize that you notice MPLID is not in this list. MPLID is not something that should be released. It is non-directory. Things like GPA, non-directory, do not release that information without written permission or working with our office on what that written permission should look like. So this is an important reminder to users as we're building queries, as we're pulling data. Make sure you're safe with how you store your data, what fields you're pulling, and then who it's appropriate to send those files to. If you have appropriateness questions about sharing data, please feel free to reach out to our office.
5-minute warning.
Okay, yep. And then this slide, and I'm going to probably take the last 5 minutes to then go out to our website to show a live version of this. We have quite a variety of reports that our office produces, and these reports are based on the 3rd week count data set. So they are, again, a snapshot in time. They are not live with the flux of enrollment that might happen if someone decides to leave us later in a semester. We take that data 21 business days after the beginning of the semester, and then we build our reports off of it. But a lot of times for what many users need to do, they just want to get a ballpark of the types of people, numbers, trends that are happening. So if you don't want to dig in so deep, there's a wealth of reports that we have available that you can use that may help you in the questions you're trying to answer. Or you can try and use 3rd week count data and build a report and match it to one of our reports and use it as sort of a way to check your results, if you will. So I'm going to end the slideshow here and go out to our website to take a look at how to navigate to some of that right now, unless there's questions relating to what we've covered so far. We're doing good. I like it. So our website is going to get a facelift in a couple weeks. It's kind of clunky right now. We're really excited about it. And so if you think it's kind of not so friendly right now, just wait. It's going to get really pretty. We're going to have lots of pictures. There's going to be wonderful navigation tiles. It's going to be great for your phone. You need enrollment numbers on the go. I mean, maybe you do. So as I mentioned before, we have our student rights and records area, which has got a wealth of information about FERPA and data protection and appropriateness for how to handle student data, their rights to their information under the FERPA Act. I suggest you read it if you're going to become kind of a student records super user. It's just entirely important. So going to our enrollment and degrees reports, we have a variety of reports depending on the type of questions you're researching or trying to answer. Most people are interested in enrollment, so we'll go to that area. Before we used to generate static enrollment reports, we've moved to Tableau as a platform for dynamic reporting, making it an interface where people can more select what they need and see a horizontal analysis, a wealth of information over time, as opposed to maybe just one semester at a time. As you can see, before, the static reports may not have had such a great timeline to look at. But this Tableau is wonderful in the sense that, you know, I can look at, I want to see enrollment for all the fall terms within the last 10 years. It's going to think for a little bit. It's going to go back and pull on that SA05 third week data set. And once it comes back up, we'll be able to take a look at some of those numbers. Here we go. So we can see numbers based on male, female. We can see numbers based on our ethnic groups. Talking before about entry type, we have new freshmen, continuing, cross-campus transfers, new transfers, people coming in fresh to our university from a community college maybe, people who come back to us, readmits. You know, it's sort of the whole battery of the different types of people who are engaging with us for their education. You can split this graph to look historically. Let's say maybe we wanted to ask another question of, let's say, age. Some people ask about, you know, the age of our students. Most students tend to be, you know, on the younger side, but there's a variety of people who again work with us to get their degrees completed. The table down below will populate based on what you've selected as split criteria or filters. You know, here are splits, here are filters on the side. We have this information now. You can do more than one split. So if you want to know male, female, and then for a certain age range, that's possible. So again, I mean, there's lots of ways you can build these reports in BusinessObjects, but if you're concerned about just getting numbers fast, if you're trying to make a business decision within your department, you may want to come out and use a Tableau enrollment report. If you want to know things by your school or college, we also have that available. There's tabs at the top here that offer that as an option. And again, we're getting our split male, female, and we have a horizontal view of data. And then we have all of our wonderful schools and colleges to look at. So there's lots of options. You know, you can either use SA03, which will be more live data that's refreshed every night. You can use third week, which is a snapshot, or you can use pre-generated reports from our website based on third week data. Just depends on what you're asking and where you want to get your answers from. So I highly recommend people review these important fields. So it was a pleasure presenting for everyone, and I appreciate the time to be able to do so.
Thank you very much, Mandy. So if y'all would stick around just for a minute. We're not doing polls because no one ever goes to them, but if you want to say in the chat pod, just anything you liked and anything you wish had been different, anything you'd like us to cover in the future, we will caption the recording of this webinar and it'll be up on YouTube, and I'll send that out to everybody who registered, as well as the resource links that I just stuck in the chat pod. And I think that's really about it. We'll turn off the recording.